okay, so I guess we started. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah,
going to start.
yeah.
It's funny because my sister, she used to go to you before I ever had children.
Yeah.
So all I heard was Dr. Rania, Faisal, Dr. Rania, Faisal, Dr. Rania, Dr. Rania. And so, but I never made that connection. And even when we had Zayn, we started coming to you and never made that connection until I don't even remember how. I saw Ayat and I was like, man, I know Zahra Ayat, you know. And I love Zahra Ayat. Like, I'm such a Zahra Ayat fan, you know. And so when I made that connection, I was like, what? Like, it blew my mind.
Weird, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I should probably introduce you, Doctor Rania.
Yeah. Rania Ayat Huwayek.
There you go. That's the one.
Yeah.
I want you to. You'll do a much better job at telling the world, whoever is listening or watching this, who you are. And obviously, I know you as the doctor of Zayn and Zoe, but you know you're much more than that. So
thanks. Well, no, actually, that defines me. People's children's doctor. So I'm a pediatrician. So just to
that's the proper word for it.
Proper word for it.
Yeah.
Which means I see kids. I look after kids from the ages of 0 to 18. Although the 18-year-olds don't understand why they still come to a pediatrician.
That
but
is
they
interesting.
Still do. I know, right?
Yeah.
They're adults, but anyway. I grew up in Dubai, and I did my medical degree in the UK, where I lived for around 15 years. Moved back here when I was a mom. Very, very different to a school student going off to the UK and coming back for holidays and stuff.
Yeah.
And since then, which was about 14 years ago, I've been working as a pediatrician. And I've been very lucky to be a pediatrician to a nice sector of the community, which I am one of, I belong to. So one of the best things about my job is I treat people like me.
Yeah.
So it's a very sociable job. It's fun. I could be there and see 25 patients a day, but I'm treating people who are my friends, who go to the same places I go to. Their kids go to the same school my kids go to, and I'm blessed because it's very rewarding in that regard.
Yeah.
So it feels like giving back, but it also feels like it doesn't feel like a job actually.
I'm sure because you're doing what you love. That's amazing.
Yeah, but also people who get it. You know, so it's which is really nice. I mean, I'm originally from Lebanon. Actually was born in Kuwait.
Me too.
There
Look
you
at that.
go. Yeah. So Gulf War, we moved here.
Me too. Well, not here. We went to Jordan, but yeah.
ونحن via Lebanon كمان,
Okay.
as you do.
So you left on the...
No, we were on holiday.
You were on holiday?
We were on holiday on the Sound of Music tour in Austria.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you just heard that?
So we heard and we never went back. So I've never been back to Kuwait.
What?
Yeah, I know,
That is
right?
crazy. Okay.
So we had our summer things. We back in the days of traveler checks and pre-bookings in hotels and diners clubs.
And you were with your dad?
Yeah. The whole family was there.
Everybody.
Yeah, we're all there. We were all there. We're Austria and Germany. And then we basically said, okay, let's just wait and see. This can't last.
Right.
And my dad's like, "Khalas, it's prepaid. Let's just use up, let's just continue our holiday. What are we going to do? Let's see what happens." Then we got to the end where the credit card stopped working.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
You don't want that to happen on a holiday.
So what do you do? So the best thing to do is go to Lebanon, where at least it's our home country. We have a place to stay, know.
So you went to Lebanon.
We went to Lebanon, which was thankfully, it's horrible to say, but it wasn't the best time to settle in Lebanon. 1990 wasn't a great summer in Lebanon.
Right.
So there was a push to leave because it wasn't like...
Was it the civil war back then?
Exactly. There was an issue. There was part of the war was flaring at the time. So it made sense for us to leave. And Dubai made sense. I had an uncle at the time who lived here. And my dad remained in the same industry, in the car industry. So it made sense for us to move here. And schools had started that academic year. That was the big push.
That's right. It was August, September.
So we only made it here beginning of October. We'd missed a whole month of school. So that was
Interesting.
And the rest is history.
So you were in Dubai since then?
1990, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So like Dubai was what? It was a desert back then?
Yeah, back then I remember a relative of mine was one of the architects or engineers changing the Trade Center roundabout.
Okay.
From a flat, you won't know this, of just a single roundabout to actually what it is today.
Yeah.
And he was talking to us about these amazing plans of changing Sheikh Zayed from its 2-lane. There was nothing on Sheikh Zayed Trade Center, Emirates Golf Club.
Yeah.
And the يسمون الكواكب buildings, these 4 or 5, where there's Safa now.
Yes, of course.
Those were there, and the Toyota building.
Okay, yeah. Toyota building's been there since, forever.
Yeah, and literally he's like, this is going to become a 6-lane highway with like all the roundabouts are going to go up and they're going to be interchanged. Like, شو عم تحكي weekend.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And so from all the way back
That is
then, yeah, it's
crazy.
crazy.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
So
Which school did you go to?
Shweifat.
Shweifat. Okay. Okay. So
Yeah.
you were always brainy
Yeah.
since those days. You know,
No.
because Shweifat was the difficult one, right? It was
Yeah. I mean, back then, if there weren't that many choices of schools. If you were American, you went to ASD. If you were, there was Jess and Des.
Right.
And then Shweifat made sense for anyone Lebanese who wanted, that sort of hardcore education. If you were French speaking, you went to the lycée. ما كان في كتير choices.
Yeah.
So Shweifat was an obvious sort of choice if you were Lebanese. And,
Right. Yeah.
And had an academic dad. My dad's an ex-school owner and math teacher.
Oh, there you go.
So
Okay.
he's very, so it's like, you're going Shweifat.
So did you always know that you were going in this medical direction, or was it like what was a teenager Rania like? Like, well,
Actually, not like this.
Heavy metal and death metal. No.
Fairly, very conservative upbringing, I have to say. So my brother, huh?
I do, of course.
We had double standards.
Yeah. Me and your brother, we have a lot of similar music tastes, for sure.
So no. Very different. I was studious, definitely. A typical first child. My two younger siblings would probably call me the third parent as opposed to the sister. And no, I didn't. There are no doctors in the family. I didn't know I wanted to be a doctor, but I was a good student, and it was almost. And there was nothing else I really wanted to do. It was almost like, that's the best thing. It's the best thing you can be. It's the best thing you can do.
Okay.
Why not? And I was lucky enough to be in a school setting that allowed for that and sort of instilled that, incepted that as something to aim for,
Okay.
So back then, which is, scary to say how many years ago that was, if I do the maths, crazy number of years. I'm almost 46, so leaving
I just turned
school,
40. So
there you go. So crazy number of years ago, 28 years ago, masalan. That it was still a great thing to be a doctor. Nowadays, if you ask me, maybe I have different ideas. But for the coming generations,
a gamer or a YouTuber,
we never exactly, as my youngest would say. But so no, I did not know I wanted to be a doctor. I hadn't ever shadowed. But it was always in my mind as a very prestigious thing to be, a very and I remember I used to I loved maths and drawing, and I remember
and drawing. Okay.
So I loved those things, and I remember thinking maybe I want to be an architect. I remember my dad saying, for you someone will always be your boss, and it's really difficult to cut your way through architecture. Try and think of some, whereas as a doctor maybe you could be your own boss.
Interesting.
And that is something that think about.
Yeah.
And I remember that was probably the only conversation that swayed me.
Wow, he really planted the seed.
Yeah.
Because if you see where you are today,
maybe
definitely it was that seed planted.
Yeah, maybe. But and I went to medical school, and it was a shock.
Yeah.
Because I went from being
in the UK, right?
Yeah, in London, and I remember again because I was in a school where that pathway was there. You could do the exams that would allow you to go to the UK, and doing medicine in the US felt like it was too far away. The whole concept was and I figured out it actually takes a little bit longer to become a qualified doctor in the US than it does in the UK.
Okay,
so the choices were made about length of degree and أقرب. It's closer. Being in London, you could travel
time
back.
zones.
Absolutely. So it just made more sense being close to home. I mean, I spent, as I said, all those years in the UK. But I remember it being a shock because I went from being like a really good student at school to just an average person at medical school because everyone there is like you. Right?
Yeah. This is the best. Here you are.
I was like, really? Okay. No, but it's good.
So you got there. You're like, okay. I'm assuming the first few years you don't know what you want to do.
So you spend 5 to 6 years as a medical course,
like a general practitioner.
Yeah,
okay.
you come out of it, you qualify as a general practitioner. Then you do a year of an internship, a general internship, where you do like 6 months of exposure to surgical specialties or 6 months of medical specialties
in hospitals and stuff like that.
Yeah, you have to do this in the UK to get registered with their General Medical Council.
Okay.
So it's not enough to just have a medical degree. You also have to have that 1 year of practice where you've been under supervision and part of a team. And it's good to do that because that's when your nose gets rubbed into really what it's like.
Right.
And it allows you to then apply to a more specialized pathway.
Right.
So, it's funny. Like when I did that, when I graduated medical school, I knew I had another 8 years ahead of me before I could go back home. In my mind, I wanted to go back home.
Yeah.
I loved being in the UK, but I felt like, I think when you are a British medical student, you start very young. So unless you're absolutely certain you want to do medicine, you almost feel like you're I don't want to say the word stuck, but khalas, you're part of something bigger than you when you're quite young. Whereas an American medical student or a Canadian medical student, you do 4 years of pre-med, you end up with a university degree, and then you apply to medical school as a mature student.
Okay.
So if you decide you wanted to step out and do something different for a while or do something different altogether, you've cashed in on a degree, and you're, whereas in the UK, khalas, you apply to medical school at 18.
Interesting.
It's a bit of a different,
Yeah.
So you really need to know. And I feel for me, I went into it without having the full picture.
Right.
And I reached the point where I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm going to sign up now for an 8-year job,
Right.
which is a training post. And I'm going to be here until I'm 30 something. And oh my God, I'm far away from home. And it's not the social setting that I foresee. Starting a family was really important to me. I wanted to meet the right person, be with people, and I remember it really having this. And I remember telling my dad, actually, in the cab, leaving my graduation ceremony, I need to take a year off.
That's in between the graduation and the 8 years.
Yeah. I need to take a year off. I'm not sure this is what I want to do. And he looked at me shocked. He's like, what do you mean? You've just I was wearing my cap and my robe. I'm like, I really don't know. I really don't think I want to. And I came back to Dubai and I was here for a year.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow. Interesting.
I took a year off.
Okay.
And in that year, I want to say I sort of found myself. I read a lot. And I made my way back into medicine via doing a nutrition MSc. I should tell this to Mirna, actually.
Interesting.
She doesn't know that.
I hope she's listening.
I did a nutrition master's. I got back, and as a mature student, I really enjoyed university in that 1 year. I did a really interesting thesis.
In Dubai you did it?
No. I did it all in the UK. I went back to
London. Oh, you went to the UK?
Yeah, I went back to London, and I only spent a year here. I went back to London. I applied to the nutrition master's. I did it. And while I was doing it, I really did think, no, actually, I'm really interested in doing medicine. And when I went back to medicine, because I'd left it for a year, 2 years by then, I had to go back through what is a generalist job, which was, interestingly, an emergency medicine job. So imagine you're in one of these emergency units, treating anything that comes through the door, not even in London, in an outskirt, which gave me everything. And I just because at a general hospital in a very large area gets so many different things through the door. And I was the only female of a group of 8 trainees in that post. And what happened was, every time a pediatric case came through the door, they would say, Rania, you pick it up. And the boys, the men, I want to say my colleagues, were interested because it was a trauma center, because there were so many big highways near this hospital. There were so many road traffic accidents. To doctors, it's horrible, but to doctors like, yes, orthopedic practice, they would jump on those, and any family or pediatric case that would come through would be mine, whatever it was, from poisoning to something that needed stitching, to a fever, to a foreign body in the eye. And I realized I never thought of pediatrics. That's how I found my way into pediatrics.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it was like you stumbled upon it, basically.
Almost. And I just realized I enjoyed treating what is essentially 2 patients, the parent and the child.
Yeah.
And
the parent, definitely.
Yeah, even maybe more than the child.
Yeah, absolutely.
I always say pediatricians are a bit like vets, because you're treating a person, an organism who doesn't always tell you what they're feeling, and you almost have to feel your way. But you have this guardian, which is the parent, who either tells you what they think the child's feeling, and you have to sort of tease away, but actually is very, very anxious, and then you're treating the parent more often.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
And I realized I loved it, and from then I just applied to a pediatric training program. And
So that's how I was going to ask you how that happened.
Yeah.
And so at that time,
I wouldn't have thought, by the way, I'm not one of those, oh, you're so cute, come, I want to kill you. As a mom, I became that.
Yeah.
But prior to being a mom, I would have never imagined that I would have been a pediatrician. Yeah.
And at that point, were you engaged or married?
No.
Okay.
Well, funnily enough, I had met my husband in that year off that I took when I came here.
Yeah, I assumed, because I was
it's funny. Yeah. So he was also based in the UK with he's a management consultant. He was working for Reuters at the time. They have a management consulting there. And he was on a project in Dubai at the time, and we met through friends, and we were just friends, honestly. And then it was maybe 3 years later that we got together, and but yeah, it was just
So throughout this time, you got married, then you had your
got married,
daughter first.
Yeah, I had Vicky first, my daughter first, and when I had my daughter, I had reached the end of my training program. And
those 8 years have passed.
Yeah, exactly. I was in my 8th year, and I'm just finishing it up, and then I started my maternity leave. And Joe, my husband, got a chance to, he got an offer to move to Dubai, which made sense to me because I couldn't imagine after maternity leave going back and working in the NHS, which is what you do as a doctor in London, with a baby, and do I go part-time and lengthen, spread my further, if I want to go into a fellowship or further subspecialist training, spread it out longer. Where do I put her in nursery from the age of 6 months, and what do I do? And so I said, although living here as a mom was an alien concept to me, or even working in Dubai as a doctor, in Dubai was I hadn't ever worked. I'd been here as a school student and on all my holidays.
And a year off.
Exactly. So it's so it was a scary concept, but it was the closest concept I could see to the kind of life I would have wanted for kids while I still followed a career.
Okay.
So we moved. I was still officially on maternity leave, so I always had the chance of going back. And then 6 months into it, I thought, no, this makes sense. And
So your husband came back here, you came back, and
we came back together. Yeah.
So did it change your perspective when you became a mom and you were a pediatrician at the same time?
Completely.
Yeah. I mean, you are at such an advantage, huh? I got this. I'm a doctor. I'm a pediatrician, and I have a baby. Fantastic. So I got this.
You would think. I mean, yes, of course you are, because the easy things are easy. You understand what a fever is. You understand there's something, but you second guess yourself. So as a pediatrician, everything's quite scientific, and you're emotionally detached from, as much as you can be, but you're emotionally detached, essentially. You know what's right and wrong.
Right.
If you're a pediatrician mom, because as a pediatrician, there's always the worst case scenario, right? Well, as a doctor,
right?
We doctors always know the worst case scenario of something, even if the statistic of that is 1 in a million or 1 in 10,000, 1 in 100,000. We know there's a worst case scenario. As a pediatrician mom, that's what you're thinking of.
Right, yeah.
So you're always thinking, what if I miss that?
Yeah.
What if I miss that with my child? What if I, that, and the fact that my kids will tell you that they hardly get regular checkups, and they're probably the last to get they get the vaccines on time, but because you always think, I'll get around to it.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, yes, of course, I feel that it's a blessing.
And it changed your perspective in the sense that it made you want to, lean in more into the pediatrics perspective.
So it made me softer.
When
I say that,
did it make you appreciate parents more, like when they come in and they talk to you? And
200%. Prior to becoming a parent, this is something my husband and I talk about a lot. Both of us have a similar outlook. We used to, before becoming parents, we used to be quite judgmental of other parents.
Okay.
Even me, while I was a pediatrician, saying, it's all nurture. I mean, I would never let my kids do that,
Yeah.
And then when you're a parent, you realize that more of it is nature than nurture. Nurture is very important, the way you raise your kids, the examples you set in front of them. But nature plays such a huge role.
Yeah, it kicks in.
And it doesn't only play it in physical appearance or in the tendencies for some X, Y, Z, but in characteristics. And you realize that that's why if you have siblings, I have siblings, we love our siblings, but we can be so different.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how different we can be, although we're genetically the closest you could be is to a sibling.
Yeah.
And it's very much nature, and there are characteristics that sometimes come down, I believe, in genes, and I think there is data to support that there are personality traits and things that come down, in your genes. But also, I think the experiences you go through really, mold you in ways that are not as straight as sit down, wash your hands before you, the things that parent passes on to a child.
Yeah.
And on the other side as well, as a pediatrician prior to becoming a parent, I was very interested in the hardcore pediatrics. When you train as any doctor, you train mainly in a hospital setting.
Right.
So naturally, you're seeing extreme ends of things. If
Right.
you're doing cardiology, you're going to see the person who's had a heart attack who's about to need a stent. If you're doing, I don't know, anything sort of gastrointestinal, you're seeing the people in hospital who might need surgery or treatment. If you're doing pediatrics, you're seeing the exception. The exception is an admission in pediatrics. It's an exception to have a child sick enough to need admission.
Right.
Thankfully, it's an exception to have a child who has a chronic illness. It's an exception to have a child with cancer. It's an exception. But when you're on the training end as a pediatrician, that's what you're seeing. You're not seeing the outpatient stuff, which
Right.
is what I see nowadays.
Yes.
So I enjoyed that stuff because it's quite scientific and it's very rewarding because children are very resilient. So
Right.
you get it right most of the time because children
okay.
bounce back. It's heartbreaking when you don't.
Yeah.
But it's very seldom, actually,
Right.
if you look statistically. As a mom, I could no longer, I did not feel I had the heart to do that type of pediatrics.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Really?
it started being very emotional, and I found that which is why I feel I focus so much more on outpatient pediatrics, or what I do.
Yeah.
General, it's almost primary care pediatrics.
Right, yeah.
Which it's seldom that you get a case
Like a serious one,
that's a life-threatening situation where you have to intervene and help and support. The majority is the day-to-day things, but it becomes empowering and educating parents, and you're almost holistically looking after a child, and you've got the luxury and the honor of actually seeing them from birth. Yani, I've now been a pediatrician in the job I've held for the last 13 years, and I have till now some 19, 20-year-olds coming and visiting me for their checkups from university because I started looking after them when they were so much younger, and it's amazing, actually,
Yeah.
and that's also an advantage. You start looking after families and not just
well, I mean,
patients.
you know my son since he was born.
Yeah.
He's 4.5 now. It's funny though. When I was younger, I used to have what do you call it? Acne.
Yeah.
So there's this doctor that I used to go to. His name is Camille Rustam. I'm sure you know him.
Yes.
Yeah. So he, I don't think he remembers that he used to see me when I was a teenager. And the other day, I'm talking like 3 years ago. I went back. And I'm 40 now. Okay, so imagine I was 17 when I used to go to him. And then I told him, like, I don't know if you remember this, doctor, but I used to come to you when I was 17. He looked at me, and he's not like, he's a very
austere, serious.
Very serious man. So he's like, well, how old are you now? And I told him, I think at the time I was like 37. And I don't think he appreciated it at all.
He's like,
thank you for telling me this. Now you made me feel very old,
Yeah.
But you're right. I think with pediatrics, it's very, it's natural because it's almost like we know that we're just going to come to you. Like that's, it's almost like an afterthought, It's like, we're going to go to the checkup. Oh, of course, we're going to go book with you, and we're going to come to you, So I understand that appeal to it, just seeing the kids growing. But you have all these people coming to you, like, how do you keep up? Like, how do you keep up with all these kids? And like, you remember when we come to you, like, oh, it's Zayn and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Now, again, I don't. Yeah, I have a good memory. It's usually a blessing. Sometimes it's a curse.
I mean, it's also good that you have the records of everyone.
But also, that's what I wanted to say. So I'm glad you. I'm very happy you say that, because it means that I give the impression I want to give, which is that you do remember, because I feel that emotionally that puts a parent at ease.
Yeah.
This doctor knows who I am, knows who my child is.
Yeah.
For us, I know you, I remember you, because I think we have sort of connections as well, just outside the clinic, right? So I'll remember you, but I have patients where I don't, but I'll always read the notes, so I keep very good notes. So I think every physician needs to write really good notes, and reading the notes, it takes 10 seconds before a patient walks through the door, whether they've seen me or seen a colleague of mine, because sometimes they haven't had the chance to see me. And it just makes that, she prepares you really well for what's coming, but also tells the patient that you know them. So I'll always say, last time you were here, and I will read. I'll say, let me read my notes to remind myself. Last time you were here, we said X, Y, Z. Reminds them what we spoke about, reminds me, and it just feels like you're not just a number for someone there with a fever or a sore ear.
Yeah.
So I think good record keeping, but actually using your records in the right way.
Right, of course.
Read them.
And building a story with each person who comes in.
Yeah.
So I think I jumped the gun a little bit. So you came back, you did your thing, you did your maternity leave.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm the paternity. My paternity leave was like very sad. 2 days. Anyway, so you came back and you thought, okay, I'm going to find a job in Dubai. And then you said, in a clinic in Jumeirah, right?
Yeah. I started in a clinic, an Infinity Clinic. It was...
Because I don't think we've ever visited you in that one. I think
your sister visited. Your sister used to visit me in that one. No, you didn't have kids then. I think, actually, your son's age is the same age of Circle Care Clinic.
Yes. I think we were like one of the first.
Exactly. This is funny. So I'm back in Dubai. I know I don't want to go to any of the hospitals because I could have applied to any of the hospitals, Mediclinic, whatever. But I know I don't want to do hospital medicine. I know I want to be there for my child, who was at the time 3 months old, and I know I want a job that brings me back. I don't want to do on calls, and I knew what I wanted to do. Right. So who do you go to? Who do you speak to say who do I work? It wasn't like listings. There aren't no listings. At the time, this was
there was no LinkedIn.
This was 2009 or 2010 actually. So it wasn't like today.
Right.
Very different.
Yeah.
So I went to my family dentist, who I absolutely love. Okay. Dr. Ahmad Jafar, I'll say his name. He's amazing. So
Shout out.
Ahmad Jafar. He's a good family friend.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, Dr. Ahmad, I'm a now trained pediatrician and I really want to find a job. And he said, you know what? I'll put you in link with my children's pediatrician, which he did, who was also a pediatrician who's now retired, who I had a chat with. And he said, I'm not looking to take on a pediatrician into my clinic, but I would advise that you approach this clinic, Infinity Clinic, and speak to them. Because I wanted something that felt close to home, close to professional home, which was the UK.
Right.
But
and they're British.
Exactly, British training, exactly. And when I went to Infinity, it was Western training, so South African / British training. And I joined them as a pediatrician, and I was able to join them part-time, which was great for me as a mom. And then 3-4 years into that job, and I became busier. Thankfully to the main doctor, Dr. Lubzer, who's a pediatric allergist, who's a mentor as well, who actually I have a lot to thank for my sort of career path in Dubai. His overflow of patients and his endorsing my practice, and then for me, my cutting my way, into as a young mom. I thought patients started relating to me. I had my second child soon after starting work, and he had gastroesophageal reflux, which now many people equate my name to. If your child has reflux, you go see Doctor Rania.
Yeah.
And I always say that Richard, my son, taught me reflux, and then my third, who also had reflux, helped me fine-tune it. I always say this. But through being a mom and a pediatrician to a child with a condition that isn't very serious, I don't want to even call it a condition, I had to learn it the practical way, which you don't learn as a pediatric trainee.
Right.
And I enjoyed imparting that knowledge.
Right.
And there was a lot of uptake of that. And I became, and since then, I've become sort of the reflux doctor. Some people even think I'm a gastroenterologist, and I'm not. But just through practical tips that I learned and I've applied on patients, and through years of experience, and so it's given me the subspecialty just through experience as well.
Yeah.
But going back to this journey, 3-4 years into my stint in that clinic, I was asked to come in as a partner to that clinic.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I became
just 3-4 years in.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
wow. Must have made a really good impression.
Yeah, I think so. There was a situation that made sense for me to become a partner, to invest in. There was a money injection that needed to go into the clinic, and it made sense to ask me to do it. And it was also a retention policy, because there was always a fear I might go work, or I would have not gone work anywhere else. And then so my two partners were senior and were older, and wanted to sell the business 3-4 years later. And this is a funny story. It'll take more than an hour.
Yeah,
actually.
it's okay.
Yeah. And also through a connection of mine, it facilitated the sale of that clinic.
Oh.
Which allowed me to then set up Circle Care.
Interesting. So that clinic, you became a part. I thought you just left and then started Circle Care.
No. I became a partner, and one day I was dropping my daughter off at school, and I had a very mini car accident with a very nice gentleman who had just bought his Porsche Cayenne. Just gotten it out of the showroom.
And he had an accident with you.
So it was my fault.
But still, like,
I'm
it
saying
was that
I'm
car.
saying it live. Yeah, it was
That's long
tiny,
ago, it's fine.
tiny. I was about to turn into parking, and he was about to leave the parking. He thought I saw him. He thought I stopped because he was
And that was his
leaving.
brand new car?
Yeah, it was like a scratch, but he was obviously upset. But he was
Oh my
very
God,
nice.
I would have
So we got
cried.
out, and I'm like, oh my God, my first patient's here. I'm late. Who's like, oh, you're a doctor. I'm also running late. Okay, let's exchange cards and let's meet here tomorrow and sort this out, And he's like, oh, Infinity Clinic, we've been looking to approach you. We're a mergers and acquisitions company. I'm like, okay, fine,
What?
great, interesting.
Crazy.
Sorted out the accident thing. It was a minor accident.
But fate
then,
is...
and then I brought it back to them. They're like, no, we're not looking to sell. A year later, they're like, maybe now's the time to sell the clinic. They're older. They wanted to cash in on the business. I said, do you remember this guy? So I WhatsApped him. I seem to have saved his number. And I said, hi, Muhammad, do you want to come and talk to them? And it facilitated the sale of the clinic.
Wow.
And through that, so my investment allowed me to then set up Circle Care Clinic.
So when you sell a clinic, and I was not thinking of asking
I
you
know.
this, but here we are. So
I learned about EBITDAs and things so early. I was a doctor, pregnant with my third, like looking at accounting and balance
That's
sheets.
interesting.
And all that.
So because you had obviously, like, I don't think you were on the path of becoming an entrepreneur or anything like that.
But with minutes, I became a partner. I became slightly more involved with the budget and the spend because I was responsible for some of the costs and and.
So you were in your mid-30s at that point?
I was because this was just before. This would have been
Maybe late 30s.
had been 9 years ago, so I would have been like 37.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you,
like
you got
36,
this
37.
thing.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I tell you, and this is something I truly believe in, that I don't think you make your luck, okay? I think things line themselves up and you're lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time. You need to be awake and aware and intelligent enough to recognize an opportunity, but if the opportunity isn't there, you don't make it. And I think I've been really lucky, and I was so lucky that the opportunity it was lined up,
right?
At the right time. Yeah. So I can't take credit for it all. I just can say that I was given an opportunity and I responded in the right way.
Yeah.
And actually, I remember when they said, "Oh, come in. If you invest, you can become a partner." I remember going home and telling Joe, this is what the discussion. And even Joe and my husband is, he's entrepreneurial minded, but he's risk averse. Even then, he just thought about it for a bit, did some quick maths, and he's like, yes, no brainer, let's go for it. This makes sense.
Okay.
So again, I even thank him because I'm quite risk averse, but it just made sense. It sort of felt like it was the right thing. It made, and it's just, as I tell you, car accident. I haven't had that many in my life. Only 2, and that was one of them. So.
What's the other one? Oh, we're not talking about that.
No, we're not going to talk about
Okay, fine.
Minor.
Your fault
nothing,
or not your
nothing.
fault?
My fault too. Don't worry. It's like always my fault.
All right,
But
we
anyway.
need to delete this from the podcast.
I don't mind. It's okay. Minor.
So when you sell, obviously when you sell a clinic, do they want to also acquire the doctors with it?
Good question. That's what they think they do, right? And this is a very maybe if I ever want to sell my clinic, I shouldn't be imparting this information out for people who want to buy clinics. I'm not looking to sell. Don't worry.
Okay.
No, but the brand. See, there's a brand to the clinic, but the doctors make the brand,
of
right?
course, yeah.
And patients follow the doctors; they don't follow the brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know this, Yani. They'll follow you. Doesn't matter where you move. They might like hiccup if it's a bit further, but eventually, if you really have developed a good relationship with your patients, they follow you. So when someone acquiring a clinic buys a clinic, they will tie the doctors into a 3 to 5 year clause, let's say, where you have to continue to work under the new ownership.
Okay.
And what they try, what I would assume they try and do during that time is to retain the patient in such a way that you're handing the patient over. And of course, you're not allowed to take the patient data. And there's so many strict rules. But Dubai is a small place. And I mean, the internet's the internet. People look you up. And, and there isn't anything now called a non-compete clause. Like no one can say you're not allowed to open a clinic really. Like I think there used to be in the past. It's a entrepreneurial's dream, I think, being in Dubai. Like we're so lucky we're here because it just allows you to.
Did they retain you? Did they have to retain you?
Yeah, we had to. So it's interesting how these things happen. So you end up getting a percentage of what the value. So the clinic has to be valued based on the revenue, and you end up getting a percentage of it with the promise of the remaining percent, dependent on the revenue that is generated in the coming period, whether it's 3 to 5 years. So you're responsible for that. So it's in your interest.
Yeah.
Some people people, I know other clinics that were sold where they got 50% upfront, and then we're told if you stayed 5 years, you get the remaining 50.
Right.
But in these 5 years, the bigger you make it, your 50% is bigger. So, so it
So that's an
motivates you to
incentive.
actually stay. It
Yeah.
incentivizes you to stay.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's interesting. And
So how many years were you retained for? Like 2 or 3? 3 years.
3.
And then at the end of year 3, you were like, nah, I'm going to go on my own.
I knew. So from the beginning, I knew. And the reason I knew, because I knew that the partners I was working in were looking to either retire or really downsize their work. So it would not have remained the same clinic. And I knew that the group who bought us wanted something different to that clinic. Its culture would have changed, its setup would have changed, the way it delivered the service would have changed.
Are they still around?
Yeah. So that's a group that bought many clinics.
Okay.
And their hospital, it's a hospital group that's bought many clinics. The clinic itself closed in COVID, actually. Just soon after.
They closed in COVID.
Yeah.
Like crazy. I feel like they would thrive in COVID.
Very early in COVID, there was, when the rules here were super strict, there was a COVID case and a couple of, I think, employees within the clinic got COVID, and then you had to shut down for 2 weeks, and then I think already the revenue was affected, and the decision was made by the new owner to sell it, which was fine. I mean,
that's when people were really scared of COVID.
I think so, yeah. But from selling, I knew that I wanted to open a clinic that was very similar in culture to the clinic I was working in, and I felt that I had learned enough, and the plan was that I would be helped and supported by the people who, my partners actually, helped me set up. Because what do I know about setting? I like the idea, but what do I know about setting up a clinic? And I was helped by, my partner and his wife, who used to manage the clinic, to set up.
Are they doctors or?
He's a doctor. So Mike Kluger, who's had my mentor, he's a doctor,
Okay.
and his wife was the clinic manager for the longest time. So
And they work at the clinic or?
now currently no,
okay.
not anymore.
But when you started,
they helped me set up the clinic. No, I think he's near retiring, and she's already left Dubai. But we're still friends. So so the idea was that I would step away.
So you were the first doctor.
And to leave
for Circle Care.
Circle Care, yeah.
So it was you, and then these guys.
There were 3 doctors. It was me, Dr. Ilaria, who still works with us and is actually medical director of our second branch in City Walk.
Oh yeah, congrats! You have a second branch.
I know. Yeah.
I saw
it's actually coming up to a year. August 22 is
That's
our
crazy, because I was at City Walk and I saw it, and I was telling Dana, I was like, oh my God, there's a Circle Care here.
Yeah. So Ilaria, who's a family doctor, who came to me as a patient with her son who had reflux, and I remember I liked her so much that at the end, again, opportunities fall in her lap, and you have to grab them.
That's so interesting.
And while I was examining her son, I sort of parked, because she came across and she said, I get a lot of doctor patients, but they don't tell me they're doctors until the end. They're like, oh, by the way, just to tell you. And I realized from their lingo, I say, are you medical? Yeah, I'm a doctor. And she was like, listen, just full disclosure, I'm a family physician and I work, but my son has reflux, and I've heard you're a good person to come, and I wanted to, which I loved. I found really nice and humble and upfront and great, and
why did they not say? Is that like
I don't know, but I've noticed that this is what they do. I don't know either, because some of them maybe think they don't want to put you off, because you suddenly start speaking more. Maybe the doctor wife has her husband with her who's not medical. They want to be patients.
Okay.
So let's give credit where credit's due. And sometimes they almost want to catch you out. Maybe I don't know. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think about it.
Okay.
But anyway, I remember with Ilaria, when we finished that checkup for her son, and we talked about, I said, you know what? I know this is quite unconventional, but I really like you and your aura, and I'm looking to set up a clinic in about 8 to 10 months. Would you be interested in considering? Because I felt she had the right attitudes, the right type of doctor. And she was the third doctor. So we started.
Wow.
Yeah. So and she's now.
And you launched before COVID or after?
Just before.
So
we opened our doors to our first patient at Circle Care Clinic on December 29. 2019.
Oh, no way.
2 days before New Year's, which was 3 months before COVID, basically. Yeah.
And so that's a crazy story. I had no idea. So, and then I'm assuming the influx of patients who came in was not a problem for you, because obviously there's a lot of people who know you already.
Yeah. So remember, we weren't allowed to advertise while we were at that previous clinic that we were leaving and setting up a new clinic, because that's
stealing patients, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. But I had already been working on the side with someone on the brand name and the logo and all of that, and then immediately there was a website set up, and immediately as soon as I left, the website went live, and then people could, if they wanted to search for me, they could. And then word of mouth. A lot of people had my own personal number.
Yeah.
Although I don't often give my number out, but some people do, because again, I grew up here, so I treat a lot of people who know me socially. You know, yeah. This is a word to people who ask me for my number, and I say no. Some people have it because they're my friends.
Yeah. Okay.
You know? But so you would say it wasn't an issue in the beginning, but funnily enough, it takes time. It takes time for people to learn a new they're driving to a new place.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. The medical record, we needed to get their medical record. So asking for their medical record and bringing it, we're not allowed to take it. We don't own it.
But they can go and get
so
it.
Officially, it should be owned by the patient, but it's also being looked after by the clinic who owns it. So when you buy a clinic, you get the medical records within that clinic. You get the server.
Okay.
Within the clinic, you get everything. You know?
Oh, wow.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it wasn't a problem, but it was too close to COVID. And even when there were hardly any cases of COVID here, just with the great things that this country did to protect us against, and just the way we dealt with COVID here was amazing, meant that people were scared to leave their home. People were scared to step into a medical setting. So
that's true. I remember that.
Yeah. So we were set up with a clinic which had 7 consultation rooms where only 3 doctors were working. And not very many patients.
Did you shut down for like what, a month?
Shut down.
At all? You were always opening? Because the medical had exception,
You didn't have to. So yeah, I remember. So everyone, when everyone had their curfew, we could apply for a permit and then, go to, I remember going to the clinic and yeah.
That's so fascinating. So now it's been 4 years?
It's been almost 5 years.
Almost 5.
So 4.5 for the first branch, and a year for the second branch.
Oh, wow. And has it been like smooth sailing? Did you feel like, is it different?
So generally, yes, I would say, again, blessed. And I feel we were very lucky because when COVID hit, we were still quite a small business. So although we were occupying a place that could house 7 doctors and then however many patients they see a day and however many nurses and receptionists and support staff they needed, we were just 3 doctors. So we had 2 nurses, we had like a cleaner, we had 2 admin people. So our overheads weren't very high. So we didn't have to either experience, like we didn't have to apply salary cuts, we didn't have to shut down, we didn't have to. So we managed with the few patients we had trickling through. And that's when I took to social media with all the COVID thing. I had the time.
That's true. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I saw it as a way of informing people about who we were, but mainly there was time and a gap of information out there.
Right.
COVID, and what started off as a drive to impart knowledge and empower where there wasn't much, or to translate medical jargon that would hit the CDC website in the US into something a layperson can understand. Became something that added a lot of credibility to the clinic itself, indirectly.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
And
I remember you were one of the first to tell us about it and how to think about it, like when we first came in the beginning.
Yeah.
And I was like, what COVID? Like, and then I had to go, and I remember you mentioned it to us.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then I feel that I did a lot on Instagram, and I started putting a lot of videos out, and I'm surprised to this day when people say what impact those had, and I feel I'm humbled that they did, and I'm so grateful that I had the time, because I find now I'm not actually that busy on I don't have the time
on social.
Social I'm not that, I'm very busy with patients.
You
but
are
because I'm
definitely
so busy with patients, I'd love to I enjoy imparting knowledge in simple terms.
Yeah.
And I find that there's a lot of knowledge out there that's wrong. Google is a minefield.
Yeah.
And there's a lot also on social media that isn't very accurate, and I don't like the fear mongering that I feel so many posts and so many videos and so many things actually. That's the path they take to try and convince people to do something or not do something. And I hate it with a passion, actually. And that's what drives me to actually dissipate the worries. Even when something might be more worrisome, I don't see the point of being worried about something that's out of your control.
Right.
Actually.
Yeah.
And I feel that as parents specifically, when you're making decisions not only for yourself, but you're making them for your kids. And actually you get to the age, you're still, even from your age, from the 40s. In the 40s, you start making decisions up and down, not only for your kids, but for your own parents as well.
Yes.
You reach a point where you're managing upwards and downwards, and the buck stops with you. Why fearmonger? Why not empower this individual who is responsible for so much, who is the buck stops with this individual,
Interesting.
With just simple knowledge that's correct. And where the control is out of your reach, then why worry about it? And to me, I feel that was my drive, actually.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I want to ask maybe less business, more because I was very fascinating. I'm just looking at how much time. I don't want to keep you here forever. So obviously you've been doing this for so long, and so you've seen so many patients. So what would you say is one of the most difficult diagnosis that you've done? And maybe was it done at Circle, or was it done in Infinity
Clinic, or even maybe in London,
or
right?
in London?
So I would say one of my when I was training as a pediatrician, so one of my pediatric jobs in the UK was hemonc, so hematology oncology. So it was a job that looked after children with cancer. And one of the most so this is when I was not necessarily junior doctor, but still not a fully fledged sort of consultant. One of the things you have to learn to do is to break news. So even as a medical student, they would teach you, even with oral exams, how to break bad news or break news.
Really?
You had to. People would observe you. This was part of your exam.
Wow.
So to break real news to parents, to say that either the chemo didn't work, or that was this was before I had kids.
Before you had kids, So you were kind of detached.
I was pregnant with my first pregnancy. I remember a child, and her name was Rania as well. Actually, I remember very well.
The mom,
the patient,
okay.
the child. And I remember talking to the parents and telling them that the treatment didn't work, and that we didn't know if there were any other options, and
oh my God.
And which is very difficult. I think that was the moment I decided I did not want to continue and do hospital pediatrics. Not that I could have done hospital pediatrics that didn't involve oncology or cancer, but I think that's when I decided I wanted something that was more day to day,
right,
or the ability to support this family, not just in those 10 minutes that I went into their room because there were 30 other patients on the ward, but to be able to maybe speak to them tomorrow, the day after, which you don't get as a hospital doctor. And that would have been one. The other one I had, which was one of my patients in Circle Care, was a child who, through investigations, because of the symptoms he presented to me, and I referred him for a cardiac assessment, we discovered that he had a cardiac condition that required very serious surgery, a very rare cardiac condition.
Wow.
And just, supporting the parents through their pathway of going to Europe to get treatments and surgeries. And with this child, it's ongoing support. So I'm very close to that family, actually. And he's a great child. He's thriving, but of course, there's always this worry in the back of their mind that this is a chronic condition that might require heart transplant. So those are the tough ones. But I have to say, the beauty of pediatrics, they are very few and far between. And when they happen, as I told you, it is unnatural for a child to have a terminal illness. It's unnatural for a child to have a life-threatening condition. It is seldom that this happens. Nature looks after fetuses that have abnormalities before they're born.
Right.
If they are, medicine is good at picking up the ones that can be fixed early on. So it's seldom that you pick something on. It's an exception, but the statistics are there. And when you have, we have 16,000 patients on our books in the clinic. Many of those are pediatric patients, and many of them are run through my office, not just my colleagues. So naturally, I will hit that statistic.
Yeah.
So thankfully, it's not very often.
But how can you tell? How can you? Because obviously, as parents, we get so worried
about these things,
you see some kind of symptom on your son or your daughter, and it's funny because, especially with you, we come to you and you're almost reassuring right away. You know what I mean? I wonder how does a doctor dismiss, for example, that it's something more serious? Like, how does the doctor say, like,
no,
this isn't
good
serious?
question. You know what? With pediatrics, it arguably is easier than with adult medicine because children are so transparent. When a child is unwell, it shows. It either shows because they don't grow well, they don't gain weight well, so they don't achieve their height potential, or their appetite is off, or they don't have energy. Like they don't like with us. We could be sick and we're at work. We do our thing. We could be I don't know, having the worst stomach virus and we go on that flight because we have we could be really sick but we really want to go out with our friends clubbing. We'll do it. We go against what our body says. We go against our body's signals because of life. Okay, children are still at the stage where they are subject to what their body's telling them to do.
Yeah.
If they are not hungry, they will not eat. If they're in pain, they will cry. They won't sit on. They will complain. So in essence, your job as a parent should be take your kids for regular checkups, even beyond the age of 2, where their vaccines become seldom. You should do at least an annual checkup. This is where it's then our job as pediatricians to do a screen, even if we don't say it out loud. We're doing it from the color of their skin. The minute we take their measurements, height and weight, that immediately rules out a whole host of chronic conditions that would eat away at a child's growth. Okay, so if a child's growing well, eating well, playful, good energy, whatever's going on is not going to be a serious thing. 999 times out of 1,000, if not more often. Okay, so that's how a doctor can tell, because you're looking at hard fact quantitative measurements, but you're also looking at the qualitative aspects, which the way I run my practice, and you'll know, is my consultation times are long. Yeah, so I would probably not be able to deliver the service I deliver if I see a patient for 5 minutes. So just by allowing a child to play around in my office, and this also goes for the developmental things, like nowadays people worry a lot about autism, Asperger's, ADHD. So the fact that children run around my office for 20 minutes, very often much longer, my patients will tell you, because that's why they end up waiting for me, allows me that passive observation that I won't be able to do with the 5-minute job. So back to how can parents tell? I think parents should keep up with the checkups regularly, but also trust your instinct. So if you have an instinct that something's wrong, bug the doctor. And there have been times where I can see nothing's wrong from where I'm sitting, from my assessment, and a parent, because of a story they've heard, because of a friend they have, because of a nephew, because of a cousin, whatever, will bug me to investigate further, like do a blood test, do this, do that. And I always say I'm the child's advocate. I don't like doing any invasive testing on a child just to appease a parent. But when it comes to the point where it's heightening parental anxiety not doing it, I will sometimes do it, because having that reassured parent is what the child needs.
Yeah, that was the second thing I was going to ask about, is how do you manage the parents? Like that's, because I feel like that's a much more difficult job, when the kid arrives, but then the parent has the questions, and some parents think they know more. They tell you like, oh, well, I read up.
No. The worst is not the worst, but the most challenging, I feel, is where the two parties are not in agreement. And
you mean the mom and the dad?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The mom and the dad. Sometimes it's the dad and the mother-in-law. Sometimes it's the nanny and the mom. I mean, I get all sorts of combinations. Don't even ask, actually. And that's challenging, because you sometimes feel like piggy in the middle.
Or a psychologist, trying to figure things out. Or a therapist, sorry.
Actually. And some people come to me and say, oh, we feel this is like therapy. Marriage counseling.
I would think so.
So I'm diplomatic, but as I said, I don't waver in the absolute fact. It's like foundation that I am the child's advocate. So that really helps, because it anchors you. So as a pediatrician, the child is your job. So one of the things I find the most challenging, parents who don't want to vaccinate their kids.
Oh, interesting.
This is really challenging, because for me, this parent's being neglectful.
Like at all? Not what? Like
some parents don't want to vaccinate their kids. They just choose not to vaccinate, and they have all sorts of things. They're well read. They've read. I'm not saying they've read the right things, or they've read they're deeply read in a very narrow canal of
which scares them.
Literature, yes. So they believe they have research, so it's very difficult because these are people like you and I. That's what I say when the people I treat are like you and me, so they're educated people. They've been there, done that. They've traveled, they've read. You can't like insult their intelligence because they are intelligent. So it makes it more challenging. So I also, it's funny, in the beginning, I used to be quite harsh about it and think to my mind, if this parent isn't going to listen to the advice I'm giving, I am not the best pediatrician for this child. As you get older and as you become more aware that the intention of this parent is to not harm their child. So my take on it now is if I can get that child who, listen, ultimately, they're their parent's responsibility. The parent is the person allowed to make the decisions. They're the main care. I cannot take that right away from the parent. We don't live in a country where you can get social services, whatever, if you think it's that bad. Yet maybe there are for certain situations, but not for not vaccinating.
Right, of course.
I mean, of course there are for certain, but not for this.
Yeah.
So you're in a situation where it's your job to shake or change or mold the parent's thinking to the child's benefit as much as possible. So I always say that if I can get this parent to see it my way, which is the scientific way, the medically proven way, until things change, who knows, in the future, but for now, that's how it is, and even allow 1 or 2 vaccines to slip through that brick wall, I'm doing this child a good that another pediatrician has not had the luxury of time to do or has given the time to do. At least then I'm helping that child. Although I can probably see 4 patients in the space of that consultation. You know what I mean? But I really feel strongly about this, So
it's difficult. I mean, when you're a parent, I mean, of course. And your whole perspective on life changes, and you start thinking, the most important thing for me is my children. And so even the visit to the doctor, like when I see Zain with a fever or Zoe with a fever, it consumes my day. Of course, as the kids get older, like you said, you get used to it. Also, with the second kid, you're like, like we've done this with Zain.
And
it's okay.
Girls are funny.
And girls are funny.
Yeah, as in they're resilient. I don't want to say, but they're quite resilient.
They are. I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah.
So I think it becomes so all-consuming in our minds that that's why when we actually finally get to the doctor's office, it's like, everything. Just tell you
everything. Because you as parents are so conscientious, you're so worried that if you omit a tiny piece of information, it could make all the difference to your child's health. So once the pediatrician understands that, there's no way you can ever be upset unless a parent's being rude for whatever reason or being derogatory or insulting, which I've never had, to be honest. But you have to absorb. You have to absorb. Because the reason this parent's so anxious is because they really love their child. They're not being neglectful. So whereby a simple cold or an ear infection is something I can work out in 30 seconds and maybe give advice about in another minute, I spend often another half an hour.
Because the parent has a list of questions. All right, we got this out of the way, and this is ask you 10 other questions.
Either making sure the parent doesn't over-medicate or under-medicate or rush the child to emergency where they might have to undergo unnecessary tests, or so. But then you find that with every additional child, like when a parent comes to me second time around their second child.
They're more chilled maybe?
They're more chilled. And then with every additional illness. So like this baptism by fire of starting nursery with your first child. Forget it. I always tell the parents, like now I have so many of them starting now, 18-month-old kids. I've seen them in the last few days where they're saying, we're about to start nursery. I'm saying, yes, flu vaccine, because it's flu season and we should all get our flu vaccine.
There you go. That's the answer that my sister wanted.
Yeah.
Well played.
Yeah. So sorry, yes, get your flu vaccine. Okay. And then I'll say, nursery. So we'll be seeing you a lot more often. They'll say, when's the next checkup? I'll say officially 2 years. So plug it in the diary, but I'll probably be seeing
next
you.
Week.
Don't worry if this is the case, don't worry, So it takes a couple of illnesses for parents to develop a security and a confidence in recognizing what is and isn't dangerous.
Right.
Ultimately, that's what they want to know.
Well, what do you think of, I don't want to keep too much of your time, but I have to ask you about antibiotics. I'm so like I'd rather so much my kids don't take them. But then sometimes when I see, for example, Zoe gets a lot of ear infections, and so when I see her like really sick and she's coughing, so I can't, my heart can't take it. It's like, let's give her fine. The doctor said antibiotics. Let's go for antibiotics. How do you feel about the use of antibiotics?
Antibiotics get bad rep. Okay, the reason they get bad rep is because there is this misconception that an antibiotic lowers your immunity. Okay, there is maybe some truth to the fact that an antibiotic kills bacteria and is not always very specific, so ends up killing good bacteria in our guts while it's focusing and trying to kill the bad bacteria. We try hard to give antibiotics that are not general, are more specific where we can, okay? It's not always easy to do that. If you have a skin infection, you can by taking a swab and doing a culture and figuring out what the bacteria is, and then maybe you can. But even those antibiotics will kill good bacteria not. So to some degree, yes, by affecting your gut barrier of bacteria, you can affect your immunity.
Interesting.
But a bacterial infection, especially in a child, stands the chance of developing from a localized infection, like a middle ear infection, which is what you're saying Zoe gets, and they're very common in kids, or a localized chest infection, to very quickly breaking that localized barrier into the bloodstream and developing septicemia.
Oh my God.
Which sounds scary. All it means is a general infection going through the blood.
Okay.
And then the biggest fear for any parent is that an infection goes to the brain, meningitis. They worry about it. So children generally are leaky. When I say leaky, their compartments in their bodies are not as compartmentalized as us adults. Right. In that it is easier. Maybe it's their size, maybe it's the immaturity of their linings, maybe it's the immaturity of their immune system. It could be whatever. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a pathologist, microbiologist, but generally speaking, it is more common for an infection in a child to spread if left fully untreated, and when a parent makes the decision to hold back on an antibiotic when it is absolutely necessary, that's the risk you're taking. But don't get me wrong, this is so rare for it to happen, because your child will become so sick along the way that you're going to seek medical help, and you're going to reach a point where you're going to have to treat before it becomes dangerous. So don't worry, you're not missing. But it is that if you trust the medical advice you're given, that there truly is a visualized, like in an ear infection, you can see it, or a visualized or an auscultated, like you can hear the chest infection, or you did a chest x-ray and saw it, and you trust that the medical advice you're being given isn't being given blindly, and it is truly a bacterial infection or a fever that's lasted for more than 6-7 days, it was viral and now they have a secondary infection, and your child is deteriorating, you have to treat it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I agree.
But what I don't like is the over-the-counter self-medicating, which is creating issues because it's creating bacterial resistance. And it's making it more difficult to treat when you need to. So I do agree that we shouldn't just throw antibiotics in. They're not always the answer. If it's a viral infection, there's no way an antibiotic is going to help you, because antibiotic doesn't kill a virus.
Right, yeah.
So seeking the right medical advice, I think, is very important. I think this is ultimately it. So seeking the advice of a medical professional you trust in imparting the right knowledge, taking the time, it's easier to prescribe than not. The most difficult thing is to do for a doctor is to do nothing. Right. So
just observe.
How often have you left my office with a prescription sheet?
Hardly.
Never.
Yeah.
And I know that others come with like shopping bags of Panadol, Otrivine, yes, of course we all need these things occasionally, but the truth of the matter is imparting the knowledge to monitor, observe what the red flags are, bringing a patient back. Like I will often say, come back in 2 days, I'd like to look at the ear again before I throw an antibiotic in. If she's having that many back-to-backs, maybe she needs to see an ENT.
Okay, well,
there we go.
Now I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. So.
No, why? No, she's fine. No.
I'm joking.
The thing is about children, going back to children being transparent. There's no way you're going to put a child who's that uncomfortable and in pain in bed and them stay in bed until the morning without you doing something about it, because they won't let you.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
They won't let you unless you're wearing earmuffs and locking them in there, which of course
That's
you're
true.
not.
No.
So don't worry, you're not missing anything. The beauty about children when they're sick, you know about it.
Yeah.
You're not missing it.
They definitely let us know, for sure.
And then there's hardly anything that is emergent.
Right, yeah.
So if they start vomiting, they don't get dehydrated immediately. It takes hours if they're continuous vomiting. So you don't have to rush, if they get a fever, the fever itself isn't a poison. The fever actually is a protective measure.
Yeah.
But treat your child, not the number. Treat your child, not the symptom. So if you're like that, and I know you're like that, and I know most parents are, you're not going to miss it.
Me and my sister, you know both of us.
I know your sister very well. Yeah, but you're not going to miss it. So don't worry. No, please go sleep tonight.
It's interesting because it's scary. It's always scary for a parent, because when Zoe was like nothing, 2 weeks old, she had like fever, and that was really, really, really scary, like, because you go on Google, it's like emergency, go, like, it was very scary, and we never knew why. It just happened and it went away.
Her older brother might have had a virus that he passed to her. It could have been as easy as that.
It's so scary. Like, with these things are so scary. And then sometimes, sometimes, I tell Dana, a third wouldn't be bad, and she would think, no. We're not having
We're done.
Forget
Why?
a third.
It's good. It's good for business.
It's good for business. No, but yeah, no. Like, first of all, thank you so much. I feel like I've been through a journey with you right now, both figuratively and literally, because we've been to your your practice since it was born with our son. And actually, one last thing. You never did you ever consider like gyno and like delivering children and stuff like that?
Good question. That is the one specialty that we don't have. So so the idea of Circle Care is that it treats the whole family. It's meant to treat the whole family, every single member of the family, with almost all the day-to-day specialties. So we have ENT, we have orthopedics, we have for adults and kids across the board.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So that's the whole idea of the clinic.
Oh, now the name makes sense.
Yeah. And that was the vision to begin with. And pediatrics is so it's a family clinic. And for me, people may disagree with this, but a child is at the core of a family. But a child doesn't have to be a child who's 0 to 18. You're a child, I'm a child. So the idea is that family is multi-generational. And gynecology and obstetrics is the one service we have yet to add, but I have a space for it. So I'm looking for the right member of the team. No, and that is the thing about our clinic as well, that we take our time into bringing people in because they need to be that right fit. So that a patient who comes into the clinic is able to see people who are all like-minded, and you're not going to get, and you have someone I'm comfortable referring to, and so no, it's on the books. It's on. It just made sense
because like from the baby to you to
it's
but
there.
No, we learned so much from you, obviously, throughout the years. I know Dana, my wife, for whoever is listening. She found so much comfort in visiting your office. And I remember it's always an event when we come to your office because we have a list of questions and we have like a list of things that we do. And we know you're going to give us your time and, you're going to give us a lot of that attention. And we always leave your office feeling better about ourselves as parents, and then the second thought is the child. Oh yeah, he's fine. But
you know what?
We feel good as parents.
Do you know what? If that's the way my other patients feel as well, I've done it the way I want to do it.
Yeah,
this is what I've wanted to do. Actually.
Yeah. Like we always, even in the family, we say like, if you were, just go to Rania, and like she'll make you feel
Medicine's
good.
easy. Listen, AI is coming. Medicine's easy. The information's out there. It's how you deliver it, and how you empower a parent to use that knowledge to their limits, and know where their limits are. I feel that's our job as pediatricians going forward. Well, so no, thank you for saying that.
No, absolutely. And thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're super busy from your schedule.
No, it's a pleasure. It was fun.
And
actually. You reminded me of things I've forgotten about,
honestly, there's a lot of times where, because you were going places like, oh, this is interesting. Let's talk about that, But thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Honestly.
All right. Thank you.